everyone. Here I am again with another Freedom to Feel conversation with Yael Melamed. So, she's a psychotherapist and leadership coach. But the most important question, if there is something important in this realm of the human experience, um, it's asking my guests who they are in their own words. So, who is Yael as of this moment?
I'm pretty sure the Buddha spent his entire life contemplating that question. I
Yeah.
need to I need to
Yeah.
answer it now. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Okay, well, I would say first of all, I'm human. I'm very, very human. It's I don't pretend to be perfect. I don't even know if I want to be perfect. I'm really comfortable being very human. And so I'm a person who I would say the purpose of my life is to heal myself and to heal others, to kind of use my own experiences to help heal others. And that is probably my essence, in addition to just authenticity and a kind of honesty that I think is rare and I appreciate in myself and others.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds beautiful. I love the piece of human being human, authenticity, and also helping others to heal. What inspired you to become a healer instead of psychotherapist? I have to call you a healer, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
we'll use that word, and it's probably true because I work in all kinds of situations. I
Yeah,
work in
yeah,
the therapy office. I work in, spiritual centers, and I also work in businesses in the concrete world.
yeah,
And people have different comfort levels with what they're calling it
yeah.
consciously, but ultimately it really is just healing, trying to improve and trying
Mm,
to make things better and more evolved,
right.
and harmonious. But what,
Yeah.
in a way, when you say what inspired me to become a healer, I think in a way you always are a healer. But what
Mm,
inspired me to
yeah,
know that or to acknowledge that, because,
yeah,
I didn't grow up in a family that was really encouraging me to do that. It was sort of like, do you want to be a doctor, lawyer, banker? You can be whatever you
yeah.
want. You choose
Mm,
doctor, lawyer, or banker kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So, when I think back in life, I was always like really empathic. I remember having a little doll that I left in Mexico on vacation and
yeah.
insisting that my parents call the hotel and make sure that she had someone to take care of her and that she would have a good life. And, I always
Ah, yeah.
had this like nurturing energy and wanting to
That's
take
cute.
care of other
Yeah,
people. But there was just no space for it in my life. So I sort of shut it down and did what I was expected. And
yeah,
then what really kind of shocked me out of that kind of zombie program in a way, the experience of finding out that I had skin cancer.
yeah,
And it was a really deep experience. I was pretty young. When you're 23, you feel invincible. You're not really
yeah,
thinking about your life ending.
yeah.
But I won't take you through all the details, but I did get this diagnosis, and I will never forget this day.
Yeah.
I was at the time at Harvard Business School, and it was lunchtime, and I was just walking to Baker Library, to get some work done. And suddenly, as I was walking, I actually had a visual of my obituary floated through my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
And it said, like, Yael was valedictorian. Yael was, top of XYZ. And I actually wept. I just felt so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like, wow, that's not who I am. Those accomplishments, that's just a list. It's not what I want to leave behind on earth. And that began a process of me kind of stepping outside of my box, and
Yeah.
actually realizing I had more choice and autonomy than I thought. I didn't even know that I wasn't exercising my autonomy.
Mm.
That just created such a impactful experience. It threw me out of my routine. And that was sort of the beginning of just realizing that I wanted to make an impact and I wanted
Mm.
to live my purpose, in a different way than I had been.
Yeah. That's beautiful, though. Yeah, I did read another details about that transition. Um, yes, and that it brings to me the subject of suffering, as we started talking a few minutes ago before the recording. What is what is suffering to you? What is the main cause of suffering from your perspective? Yeah.
Yeah, there's sort of a common saying that, pain is inevitable. Someone dies, you have an accident, you lose a job, whatever, your heart gets broken, but suffering is optional. And so
Yeah.
the suffering that really resonates and always has with me. And, an example is someone breaks up with someone, and the person,
Yeah.
of course, experiences a loss. We're attaching mammals, and of course, that's painful.
Yeah.
And so crying and grieving that, that's the pain, but then kind of fighting with it,
Mm,
"Oh, this person sucks," or "I wish that
mm,
didn't happen," or "It should have happened
mm.
like this." Those are all the layers of
Right.
additional suffering on top of the pain that we actually
Right.
do have control over if we can tame our crazy beast of a mind,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and learn to be more present.
Yes, it's so true. You see, I have heard that so many times. Pain and suffering that they are different. I know it's not easy for most of us to distinguish them. We usually kind of carry the pain for so long that it becomes suffering. It might have something to do with time too, not just interpretation or fighting it.
You're bringing up something really important because psychologically, when you feel something, you can actually discharge out of the pattern, which is what we all hope for. You process and you release and you let it go. But
Yes.
sometimes you can be discharging into the pattern and you're making it bigger, and people can get attached to that pain.
Mm, yeah.
And that also, like, I agree with you, it can result in more suffering. If you don't know how to process a difficult situation well and fully, it can actually, unfortunately, have the opposite effect, where it sort of results in even more suffering.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me again. That's why this platform is titled The Freedom to Feel. And with
Yeah.
that in mind, I have to ask you that question already. What is a freedom to you from that perspective of feelings and emotions, especially the heavy ones, the ones that we tend to reject?
Yeah, we reject them because we live in a society where we need to be super contained and buttoned up and perfect.
Yeah.
I actually, in a way, obviously, the pandemic has been really challenging on many fronts, but of course, to every coin has two sides.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits and blessings I feel is that you kind of like no one could keep it together perfectly. And
Yeah.
there was a shared vulnerability and humanity in that.
Yeah.
And I found that, even in businesses, suddenly mental health was a topic. And you
Yeah.
actually were
Yeah.
forced to realize that this person is a human
Yeah.
and it's okay to have mental health challenges.
Right.
And in fact, we just need to address it. And so, to get back to your question,
Yeah.
to me, freedom is to be who you are. I trained at the Jung Institute, and Carl Jung says the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you are. And so, for me, in my own personal journey, and something I
Yeah.
really support the people I work with in, is being themselves, being integrated and being themselves. And you kind of take yourself with you everywhere you
Yeah.
go, and stuffing it just doesn't really serve anyone.
No.
So, to me, it's like, to welcome all parts. I hope for society to grow a little more tolerance for
Yeah.
what is, and to get out of the toxic positivity, or shying away or being afraid of the shadow, and just welcome what is. To me, it's the most effective way of moving through all
Mm,
this.
yeah. It that is the goal of healing, would you say? Yeah, it's to get to that point of uncovering who we are. I know this might tap into spirituality or concepts, spiritual concepts.
Exactly. It's not really separate, but I think people come in with certain goals. Like, I want to grow my business. I want to develop confidence. But usually what they've come in with isn't really why they're here. And I find that we usually go on a much, much deeper journey. And ultimately, the goal, there are a few probably, but it's frankly
Yeah.
just to feel better, to function better, to open up the heart,
No.
to, integrate the head, the spirit, the heart, to live to live one's potential, and to heal. Part of that is healing past wounds, letting go of things, structures,
Mm,
identities that don't
yeah.
serve us, to open to what's possible. We could probably go on and on about it, but really, it's like, I wanna upgrade the human, as much as we possibly can, with the goal of being a better member of society, and also just a happier
Yeah.
and more whole member of society. Everything flows from there. I've had an experience once, someone came to me wanting to improve their business. We never talked about their business once. We healed their trauma, and then they got so busy, they had to stop seeing me because, their
Yeah.
business picked up so much. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's kinda like I'm a believer in working on the inside, and kind of the
Yeah.
outside really does follow.
Yeah. And is that your definition or idea of spirituality? Is that what that be in a way? walking through the human, the parts, and that's unhealed, that believes that we are not whole, to come to this that feeling of inner peace and fulfillment.
It's interesting. I never thought to define it per se,
Mm,
but what comes to mind is Albert Camus said, "It was in the depth of winter that I found in me an indestructible spring."
yeah,
And for me, that's the spirit. That is the spirit. It's kind of indestructible. It's strong, even when really painful, difficult things are happening
yeah,
on a more personality level. It's like that part of us that we were born with,
yeah,
where we come from and where we'll return to, that if we can tap into it and access it, it just helps to give a different platform and holding for our human experience. And kind of we were chatting before, I really don't
yeah,
believe in one or the other. I don't
yeah.
think we want to, just be these spirits floating around, although that might
Yes,
it might be appropriate for some people.
yeah,
But for many of us who work in the world, again, it's to that point of integration. It's like we want to bring the heart and our spirit, even as we're taking on a major scientific endeavor, because all of it is just more inspired. And by the way, the
yeah.
Latin root of inspire is in spirit. It comes from spiritus. And so, yeah,
So it takes practice, training of body, mind, that complex, right? Yeah, that's what it has been for me. Even though I have deep understandings and perhaps even realizations of the ultimate reality or pure consciousness, but it always comes back to the body, mind, to this present moment, this dream reality, and working with what is here, being present to what is present. And a lot of times it doesn't work because the sense of trying to be the one who is in control of whatever it is kind of always comes up.
maybe not fully, but I think it can improve in a major big way. And the more that alignment happens, the better and more smoothly life goes. It's kind of like you learn to control the controllables and then just surrender to what you can't control. And what I've always found interesting is, people think the spiritual talk is very highfalutin, but
Yeah.
actually I've encountered very high performing athletes as well as business people and CEOs, and they often have a meditation practice. They often actually work with controlling the controllables and not wasting any energy about
Mm,
the things you can't control simply
right.
because it's inefficient. And so, yeah, this is very universal. It might just be languaged a bit differently, but it's very universal.
Yeah, it really makes sense to me from that perspective too. So it's kind of training the body mind to do what it can within that realm that it can control. I was just asking that question. It came to me that because the body mind, they are grounded in this reality, which is temporary. So it's almost like as a waste of energy in a way too, if the spirit is using the body mind as vehicles to communicate its message. It can really not to, like it cannot really not do. So it's always doing, striving for something, even to be here, to be alive, to have the energy to have this conversation. A lot of times I feel like the spirit is just always here, and it doesn't have to be engaged with body mind. Doesn't have to be attached for sure. Engaged, yes, but not attached.
I always tell patients of mine or coaching clients that, it's kind of like if you don't learn your lessons, I can almost guarantee that at some point or another, life will kick you hard in your behind and force
Yes,
you to learn them. So the more proactive that
yeah,
we can be, hopefully the gentler the learnings
mm,
are. But, I
yeah,
was joking with you that I've been in this conversation with God, basically,
yeah,
the rules of life here, because there's just so much suffering everywhere, and it just seems like it's gotten more and more. And I keep wondering, is there a way for us to learn more gently? I
yeah,
don't want to scream at my child when she makes a mistake. I
mm,
want to lovingly steer her in the right direction. And
right.
is there an ethos that can be kind of like brought to life, or does it have to be so harsh? But for the moment, it seems that there tends to be a lot of growth
Yeah,
in pain and suffering. And so I'm a huge fan of Viktor Frankl. His work really informs me, and it's kind of like we can't control what happens to us in life, but we can
yes.
choose our response to it. So I really believe in
Mm,
always figuring out how to make lemons of lemonade or
yeah.
lemonade of lemons.
Yeah,
Lovely. make lemons out of lemonade.
Yeah.
Um, that's really important, and it gives a sense of purpose when we are encountered with loss, suffering.
Yeah.
Um, okay, here's what we can try our best to do with it.
Yeah.
And that's not to negate the grieving period whatsoever, because like we were saying before, we need to embrace it all. But there is the point where there's something to do with this that's productive and constructive.
Yeah, that sounds like a very gentle way of dealing with the unexpected, the harsh situations in life, right? Kind of
Yeah.
focusing the our minds to what can be done. What can I see here? I usually ask that question: what is the truth about this? What's the nature of whatever is happening when, especially when it's difficult emotionally?
But remember before we were talking about the psychological marrying with the spiritual? What I've found is if you go in too early and it's like, okay, what's really happening here? People aren't ready. The human isn't ready for this. The human wants to have a tantrum. And at least the way I work, I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
you can have your tantrum. And when you're done with your tantrum, then we're going to look at this. But I feel like if you do that prematurely, it backfires. And so again, I give space to meet the human where they are, and then also to meet the spirit where the potential is. And I think that those together are
yeah.
incredibly powerful.
Ah, yes, that's beautifully said. Right. The element of readiness, right? I noticed that even for healing, like to be ready to go on this journey, right, of healing, it's not easy. So we need to be ready. And what makes us ready? Is that saying yes to the first step, yeah, or as we mentioned before, suffering, going through hardships takes us to that decision to heal.
It's different. It's really different for everyone, but what I do know is, sometimes I've actually had to fire someone who came to therapy 4 times a week because even though he was coming 4 times a week, it was pretty clear to me that he did not want to actually do the work, and by the way,
Yeah,
that's the only person I've ever had to let go of. It's not something I would ever normally do, but I'm ethically required to not see someone if I don't feel that I'm helping them. And so kind of what that taught me is really it's a deep decision from deep inside. It's abstract. It's a little bit
yeah,
tough to articulate concretely, but even in all the research about therapy, the number one indicator of a successful treatment is the patient's willingness to change.
yeah,
Number two is the relationship with the therapist. And number three are the methods and modalities. And so
yeah,
it does start, the fundamental building block is a deep desire inside to agree to say, yes, I'm ready to do the work. I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to shed,
yeah,
whatever identities and wounds and pain to move into
yeah.
the next version of myself.
Right. So it takes being open to change, right? Yeah.
Yeah, agreeing to it.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, it resonates true to me. Another question that I wanted to ask you before was here: what is to be mentally healthy from your perspective? How would you describe that state?
Well, mentally healthy means, you're in a relatively balanced state of mind. It means not being
Yeah,
really reactive. It means not being in a state where your amygdala
yeah,
is constantly triggered, um, so that you can actually see and think rationally. It's having an observing ego so that even if you do get triggered, a mentally healthy person can say, "Oh boy, I was triggered." And there's a distance rather than living it out and acting it out. I also
yeah,
think it's a kind of integration. My heart communicates with my head,
yeah,
and in my particular brand of belief, it also communicates with my spirit. So all kind of working together to have really holistic thoughts and decisions. Um, it's feeling pretty balanced, feeling pretty grounded, feeling secure. You know, who's mentally healthy? It's a total fluid situation, and some days we are mentally healthy and other days we slip out of it, and then we come back to it. But to me, health is it's also about honesty and really being
mm,
able to see oneself and be willing to see
mhm,
oneself and be willing to acknowledge mistakes and failings, and
yeah,
to be in touch with our vulnerability also, because if we're
mm,
not, it comes out sideways.
yeah. So true. Beautiful answer. Yeah, I love that. I love your wisdom. From it's almost like science and spirituality coming together and in harmony. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. So it's dynamic, balance, mental health, life itself, right? Yeah, it's always changing. So we are never really, we never
Absolutely.
know everything, and we're never really there. There's
Oh,
no,
yeah.
right?
That was I remember that was a horrible moment for me when I realized my mentors and teachers and even people spiritual people I admired were really not
Yeah,
perfect, and they were going to be and they were just
yeah,
human, and I actually remember being in a class once and hearing this journal of Mother Mira, who is one of, she's kind of Amma, the hugging saint. She's one of these struggling saints. And in her journal, she wrote, "Some days I still feel like a zero." And that really
yeah,
landed with me like, wow, even this person has those
yeah,
very human feelings sometimes. And so there is no state of, perfection. It's like we just keep growing and evolving, and that's what's important. And sometimes we go a step back and then we try to take a couple forward. And like you said, it's very dynamic.
yeah, yeah. And it to me has been practice, training, always being committed to this. Let's say to love, to kindness. That's really the commitment. There's something about what you've been through. The blog post about what I learned from my best friend's death. That's and then the lessons you have learned. Just changing the subject for a
Sure.
moment. So lesson number one, you wrote energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Lesson two, love, relationships, and sharing are the most important things in life. And then you write lesson three, while we cannot control all that happens in life, we can control the way we respond to it. So these are the lessons you have learned, but talk to me about that experience. Yeah.
It's something that still I feel emotional about, and I still miss my best friend who passed away from a freak accident in
Yeah.
2016. I I remember getting the phone call and my
Yeah.
entire body shaking and, being in total denial saying, "Check again. She's definitely not dead." It's so shocking, a vibrant, young, healthy person.
Yeah.
Um, And gosh, that was such a process. And maybe one of the most surprising things for me is I don't feel like I lost her. Sometimes I miss her or I wish, that we could do something together, but I actually really feel her presence frequently and in some way feel that our relationship has deepened. I think about her often. I in my head, I don't necessarily speak out loud to her, but I feel like
Yeah.
I'm communicating with her and I feel her. And that's like the energy can't be created or destroyed. It's probably a topic for another time, but you know, I don't experience her as gone. I just experience that she's there in another form. And that surprised
Yeah.
me, really
Yeah.
surprised me and been very powerful because I don't feel I've lost her. And in a way, I feel like we're working together because of the grief
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
and that we're
Yeah.
sort of collaborating. But yeah, I actually had a dream, and in the dream, I asked her if she had any last wishes, and she said that she would like me to stay in touch with her family, which I do, and particularly her mom, who is such a love.
Yeah.
Um, and then she asked if I could run these grief groups, and she said
Yeah.
that people on earth the biggest source of suffering on earth is that people don't know how to let go, and there's just so much of this suffering, to bring it back to your first question, and
Yeah.
that because of some of my life experiences and my training, I actually know I've had to learn to let go, and I know how to teach people to let go. So she made that request. I always joke because she was very bossy in the best she
Yeah.
had requirements. She wanted, group to be offered for free, so it's something that we
Wow.
fundraise for, and honestly, actually interested if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I would love
Yeah.
that, because we do give the group away for free, and, that is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to do. It feels like a love offering,
Yeah.
and even when people have the resources, there's something so special about it. Feels like Harry is loving you. The universe is loving
Mm.
you, not
Mm.
expecting anything in return. This
Yeah.
is just a chance for people to receive. And, I contacted my friend who passed away. Her name was Clary. She was really deeply involved in the Shivananda Center in San
Yeah.
Francisco. And I contacted her teacher. I told her about the dream and the idea. She was totally on board.
Yeah.
But then I became pregnant with my daughter, who's actually named after my friend who passed away.
Wow.
Religion we name after the dead. And so I kinda got distracted and sidetracked, and then probably 3 weeks after the pandemic, I actually heard her voice, and it said, "Yael, the time is now." And so I immediately wrote that article and
Yeah.
started the group, and it's been an amazing journey. We've had a homeless person in it. We've had all walks of life in it. Just people, and by the way, I don't consider, grief isn't just, "Oh, someone died." Grief can be any kind of loss that we're struggling to accept. So it can
I,
be the loss of a relationship,
yeah.
having being forced out of a country. We've seen all different kinds of things, like, a parent who stops talking to their child, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Um, kind of work both spiritually and somatic methods as well as psychologically,
Yeah.
group methods to help people let go. And this has been a really, for me, rich experience. Um, really changed my relationship with death and what happens after death, and kind of the spirit world.
Yeah.
And also, it's just been so beautiful. In Hebrew, when someone dies, we say, may her memory be a blessing."
Yeah.
And I feel that Carrie's memory is truly a blessing to so many people, because there's this legacy that keeps giving. And
Yeah.
I know that that act, it's kind of like turning the lemons into lemonade. That act of
Mm,
something positive with my tragedy has really helped me heal from it.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, it was very profound for me. I felt it when I reading the story and the way you communicate the message of letting go and the influence that she had in your life. That
Yeah.
made me think about the soul connection.
Could I
And
add one quick thing
yeah,
that I think is important?
yeah, yeah,
Well, something that I realized, that if there was a message I want to share with people, this is one of the main ones, which is, when I kind of thought about how Carrie lived her life, I think she would have been really proud of it. If she were on her
yeah,
deathbed knowing she were dying. She had a hardcore job at Google, which was great, and she accomplished a lot and all of that, but she realized that she needed space for herself, and she really maintained the spiritual practice. And very ironically, as though her soul knew, in the last year of her life, she took a sabbatical and she went on a big, fabulous trip with everyone she was close to, and including me.
yeah.
Um, and it made me realize, and I had the experience myself of kind of the obituary floating through my mind. But when you say, "What's the purpose of life?" To me, dying and feeling proud and happy of what I'm looking back on. And it doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes, but it means that we then correct them and handle them and address them. And so I know that when I'm making big decisions, often I'll imagine, okay, well, my ego feels like this, but when I'm on my deathbed, what do I
Mm,
want to have seen? And that
mm,
so helpful for making less egoic decisions. So sorry,
uh,
I just wanted to say that, because
yeah.
it was really
Wow.
remarkable to me how her life, in a way, there was, although it was totally tragic, there was also a bow I could tie around it as well.
So that makes a lot of sense. That sense of purpose. And then I do have. We're almost at the end. Yale, I know you have to go. Yes. So let me see that purpose. So that's what it feels like for you. Purpose. What do you do today? That's everything that you do. Do you have the strong feeling of living the purpose of your life, or do you think that it could be something else in the end?
Um, I'm sure it will evolve, but I lived the first part of my life without purpose. I mean, I'd have a little purpose, maybe with a lowercase p, like,
Yeah.
okay, get into business school, get an A. I guess some kind of purpose, but there was always something unsettled, empty. And then when I found my purpose to be a healer, although I don't normally call myself that, but I think at its root, that is what it is, every single thing changed. And, I used to have the Sunday blues, and I used to dread Monday. And it's like, I don't have that at all. Like,
Right.
Monday is like Sunday, and it's amazing in a different way. And I feel so grateful and blessed.
Yeah.
And I believe that everyone actually has a purpose, whether they discover it or not,
Yeah.
is a different question. But I think that that's part of alignment, is living one's purpose, even if it, comes at a risk, or even if you have to step outside of a box, or people don't approve, or you think you can't. I actually believe we all come in here with a purpose, and that we're out of alignment if we're not living our purpose. But I do feel that deep sense of purpose, and speaking of mental health, it's a big factor in my mental health. Every single day, I know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that brings a huge amount of peace.
Yeah, yeah, it can be felt. It has this energetic resonance. So thank you so much for being you. It's truly beautiful. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you
Uh,
for doing what you you do, Valeria.
Oh my God, I love this. It's a lot of work a lot of times, but it's my sacred space. It's. I mean, that's what it is. The calling, as I usually say. This is the end of the interview. I do have this ending question, but you actually answer my ending question. If you have one message you wish everybody to kind of hold on to reflect upon, you mentioned that. Starting with the end, that sense of purpose. Is there any other message that you wish people who watch this video they could take with them?
Yeah, I would really say begin to work with your heart. I think a lot of people, especially in the achieving world, and
Right.
PS, I am a recovered overachiever, I get it, but are almost afraid to be in their
Right.
heart, think they won't be successful, think they'll lose their edge. And what I find is it's quite the opposite. It is so powerful to be balanced and to bring the heart more online. And in our Western culture, I think that's really, really missing.
Yeah.
And there's a way to do it and weave it into a lot of worldly success. And it creates so much more happiness and so much more happiness for yourself and those around you. So that's that would be another one.
Yeah, yeah, that resonates. You paused me for a moment. Yes. So thank you so much again for your beautiful
Thank
presence,
you.
for the impact that you're making in your own life. That's what we need to see more, this heart energy in this reality. And that's what I hear from you. That message is beautiful, the ending one too. So before we say goodbye for today, what's the best place to find more information about you? Yeah.
Well, I guess officially my website,
Yeah.
yaelmelamed.com, or call me.
Yes, oh, wonderful. So I'll have that information under this video interview. Thank you again for your presence, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now. Yeah.